My name is Michael Fulford, and I am going to be speaking about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. In the video that we watched today, or for this specific project, um, he talked about how a fixed mindset is very much so ego oriented. And under that mindset, it is discussed that, fixed mindset, people do believe in talent and not necessarily that effort leads to success. Um, a particular story of this, or kind of an example of this, is during my time as the head men's basketball coach at Hoover High School in Fresno. We made the playoffs and we were slotted to play our second round matchup against San Joaquin Memorial, who at the time had the best player in the country by the name of Jalen Green and had another top 50 player in the country by the name of Dion Stroud. Both had multiple offers going to the next level, the Division I level. They were also a private school, which means they're funded. They have a lot more time to kind of hone in on their skills, and they had played a semi-national schedule in the sense where they played against all sorts of talent around the country, and they were in big-time tournaments. And then us being Hoover High School, we're just a public school that didn't have any known names or anything like that. All the kids were local. They lived within 3 miles of the school, and Hoover did not necessarily have a background of winning basketball. Whereas San Joaquin Memorial has produced a couple of NBA players, Robin Lopez, Brooke Lopez, and Quincy Pondexter come to mind. So, the narrative was that when we played them in the playoffs, them being a 2 seed, us being the 10 seed, that we would have no shot, no opportunity because they were so talented. And early on, my kids, in terms of my players, I think they felt that and they understood that. And I quite frankly, I think they began to believe in that. My focus going into that game, because we were such an underdog in the sense where everybody thought we were going to lose by roughly 40 points, is that we have to do what we can do and control what we can control. We needed to make sure that San Joaquin Memorial couldn't just rely on their talent. That was the message going in the entire week. Make it so that they cannot just rely on their talent, and force them to actually use their intelligence in terms of being able to play basketball. Long story short, we ended up losing the game by 4 points, but we gained the respect of everybody, including we gained more respect for ourselves, because we realized that when we focus on the things that we are able to control, we can do some extraordinary things. In an article titled "How to Embrace and Leverage Growth Mindset" by Colleen Best, she states that we have a preset amount of knowledge and aptitude in any given area. If any point we do not succeed, this is interpreted as us hitting the limits of our aptitude. She explained this within the fixed mindset, and what that means is, for example, I had a kid by the name of Bakari who was a phenomenal athlete even coming into high school from 8th grade to freshman year. He was a great athlete, and but he had some limitations. He was stronger than everybody, he was faster than everybody, he jumped higher than everybody, but he couldn't use his left hand. And as a basketball player, especially when he gets to the varsity level, they're going to start exposing that. The issue with Bakari is that he was always so much more talented than everybody that he didn't want to put any effort into getting better with his left hand. So oftentimes when we would do ball handling drills, he would kind of not put his all into everything, because I don't think he wanted people to see him not be successful. And more importantly, I don't think he was ready to see himself be unsuccessful, quote unquote. My goal with him was just to make incremental improvements every day. Let's make 2 less turnovers in this drill than we did yesterday. Let's make 1 less turnover during this 5 minutes than we did the last time we did this drill, things like that. And then in an article, another article by the name entitled Predictors of Success of Self-Confidence in Collegiate Athletes by Mo Machetta et al. They describe maladaptive perfectionism in terms of it includes the fear of failures, concerns for making mistakes, and apprehension for the evaluation of others. I spoke about this in a previous paper that I wrote in the sense where we live in an instant gratification age and a social media age in which the kids are subjected to everything they are doing being posted online. Everything that they are doing is up for criticism, and so I think it's kind of given them some and rightfully so, some anxiety about doing certain things. When you know that you have a microscope on you and everything that you do, especially in things you may not be naturally gifted at, it can begin to kind of mess with your confidence. And this is exactly what maladaptive perfectionism is, because now I'm noticing that our kids, and now that I coach in college, and even them, they are so worried about how they're being judged for everything that they do. So a lot of times they're worried more about how it looks on the outside as opposed to giving their maximum effort. And they're afraid of challenges. I think that's really interesting. For example, we played a team, this is me coaching at Reedley College, we played a team called Las Positas last year. And Las Positas had a player by the name of Michael Hayes, who was probably about 230 pounds. He was 6'7". He was a freak athlete, and he just towered over every single one of our players, both physically. And it kind of messed with us mentally early on. And I think we had certain guys who were so used to being the most athletic on our team that when they run up against a player by the name of, such as Michael Hayes, they kind of shell up a little bit. And it looks like they're afraid to take that challenge. And I think as they're intrinsically just afraid that the judgment is going to be, so-and-so doesn't have what it takes to match up with him, as opposed to maybe looking at it from a different perspective and saying, okay, well, maybe Michael Hayes is just gifted, and not really worrying about us. So we have to make sure that we change our behaviors and our mindsets on that. And then lastly, there's an article by the name entitled "The Effects of Mastery versus Social Comparison Praise on Students' Persistence." And a lot of this has to do with the idea of participation trophies. My dad, being a coach for 30 years, never believed realistically in participation trophies because he always thought that it would give kids a false sense of achievement, and kids would start to value awards and what success looks like, as opposed to really valuing just improving from day one until the last day of whatever event it is. In that article, they state that individuals with a fixed mindset tend to be interested only in the feedback of their success and activities to the degree that it serves to evaluate their underlying ability. And that's kind of what it talks about. I think that in this day and age, kids and anybody with a fixed mindset, if they're not given an award, they automatically think that's a knock against them, as opposed to being praised for them just growing as a person, growing as an athlete. And I think that's something as coaches we need to really keep in mind. On the other end of the spectrum is the growth mindset, and this is more of a task-oriented thing. I put here that people that have a growth mindset believe that the most basic qualities are hard work and dedication. At Reedley College, we tell the guys all the time, the number one thing we tell them when they come in is that they need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what that basically means is there can't be any growth if you are always stuck in what's familiar to you. You got to put yourself in situations in which you have to learn, you have to ask questions, you have to be willing to expose your weaknesses and work on those things in order for true growth to occur. I think that's far more important than actual achievement of whatever success or society deems as success. We want our guys to define what success looks like to them, and then we can help mold them into the player they desire to be, as well as being incorporated into a team event. In the same article, in an article titled "Helping Students Enhance Their Grit and Growth Mindsets," in fact, they state that mentality is that they do not know it yet, but through effort and practice, they will learn new concepts and gain skills. And That's exactly what we strive to do in athletics. We have a term called redshirt guys, and those are guys that may not necessarily be ready to play for that season, but just need a year of seasoning. And this is exactly the mindset we try to get our guys to have: is that they have to understand that the things that they got away with in high school in terms of their talent and their ability level isn't necessarily going to work at the college level, but that they have the ability to gain these new skills. And I think when you tell guys that they have the ability to grow and they really embrace that, that's when the true learning begins and you start to see them reach their maximum potential. But they have to first believe that they have the ability to get better and that they actually need to get better, as a matter of fact. And then we also talk about, as Colleen best stated, reducing the fear of trying a new thing, the fear of failing, or the fear of making a mistake, because we hold the belief that we can always grow and learn. Whenever I'm coaching during practice, I always make sure that our guys are doing everything at such a pace that is super unfamiliar for them. Oftentimes we have guys working on ball handling, and I'll see the ball kind of fly across the gym, and I encourage that. And the reason I encourage that is because that means they're pushing themselves. If they're going at a pace that they've got everything under control, then they're not getting any better. And that has more to do with an ego-oriented view and the fixed mindset, as opposed to growing in a task. The task is to get better. The task is to put yourself and your body through unfamiliar situations so that you can grow. In the article about the effects of mastery, they state that individual is not terrified of failure under the growth mindset because it only signals that they need to pay attention, invest effort, apply time to practice, and master the new learning opportunity. The two people that I really think about in this situation is Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Most recently, in terms of Kobe Bryant, early on in his career, matter of fact, his rookie year, he ended the season with 4 straight air balls in a playoff game. And while if he had a fixed mindset, he could have used that to define who he was as a player. And I think that would have been the downfall of him. But he had a growth mindset, and he went right back to the gym and understood, okay, this is where I can get better. I wasn't very proficient during this time, but here's how I get better. And he used that mindset to become the player that he was and went on to have a great career. And the same can be said about Michael Jordan. The old adage story about him being cut from his varsity team as a sophomore, and instead of using that and saying, hey, I'm just not good enough and I'm going to quit, this is where I've reached my ceiling. He went on to obviously show everybody that he belonged on the varsity team, but went on to be arguably the best player of all time from a basketball standpoint. And I think when guys apply themselves and are honest with themselves about, okay, here's a learning thing. I'm not very good at shooting, so let's learn how to shoot. I'm not very good at defending, so let's take time to break down more film. That's when we can really grow. And then lastly, in the article of predictors of sources of self-confidence, they talk about, as opposed to maladaptive perfectionism, they talk about adaptive perfectionism. And what that is that it encompasses the drive to succeed, motivations to do the best on the task at hand, pleasure in putting forth maximal efforts and achieving a goal, and freedom from social evaluation, the flexibility of failure. One of the biggest examples around town of that is Ed Maddock and his Fresno City men's basketball team. He really gets his guys to focus on very small goals every single year and every game, in the hopes that the entire goal of them being successful and winning comes to fruition. They've managed to do that. They've won 18 straight conference championships. They've won 4 state titles underneath his tutelage. And it's because he actually preaches adaptive perfectionism. We'll be perfect, but we're going to be perfect doing small tasks. We're not going to be perfect all at once. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Albert Einstein had a great quote and says, "You never truly fail until you stop trying." And I think that's so true, as there's when you fail, it's not necessarily failing, but you're looking for more ways to be successful. Here are the references attached to my presentation, and thank you.